everyone, Gary Simon here of DesignCourse.com. Welcome to Design Challenge number 26 review, and this is based on designing an iOS app icon or app launcher. Now, we had like 40 entries, which is great because that's more than any other contest that we had before. But I have to say I am pretty disappointed in most of the entries. We had a couple really good ones, but for the most part, the quality wasn't there that I would hope, at least as a baseline. I think what I'm going to start doing from now on for future design challenges is put forth more specific guidelines in terms of what you can and can't do. All right, because most of you are just brand new designers, and I'm just going out there and say, hey, design a logo. And it's just not working out. I think it's going to be best for you guys and myself when I'm reviewing these and critiquing them if I put forth more specific guidelines. So look for that in the future. So now what I want to do is pick the winner, the one random winner for the live one-on-one design training from DesignCourse.com, and then I'll do the review. All right, let's get to it. All right, so here are all 34 unique entries or submitters to the contest right here. So if you submitted one, your name should be in here. And so let's go ahead and do this. Pick a random name. And this person, once again, will win the one-on-one design training. And again, let me get that up on the site real quick. And that is right here. So this is what I released last week. This is hourly one-on-one design training with myself. We use something like a Skype client. So yeah, check this out. And this person just won 1 hour. Cool. So I will get a hold of you and we'll set that up if you wish to take advantage of it. All right. So let's go ahead and get started here with the review. There's a lot of them, so I'm going to go through these kind of quickly. All right. So Lork S. All right. Hope I understand the overall idea of network secure. Unfortunately, I think you misread that. It was neighbor secure, I believe. Yes, it was. So maybe you kind of got that confused a bit. Let me scale this down just so I could see it a tad bit better. So yeah, unfortunately, the shape that we have here with this doesn't really make sense to me. I'm not even sure what this here is, like maybe like some type of stand for this to go on. But unfortunately, it's just too confusing. So that would be the major crux of the issue here with this design. And plus it's the fact that it's neighbor secure, obviously no neighbor was worked into this symbolism at least. So that is one issue. But thanks for the entry anyhow. Let me go back to 100% here. Okay. So N for the neighbor makes our house in round strokes to give it a technological and friendly, approachable feel to it. All right. So this isn't bad, but I just think there's probably, it's a little bit too difficult for me to make out the N if I didn't know an N was worked in here somehow. So there's a lot of lines coming together, even though it's simple, which is good. But I think if you could try to maybe eliminate the idea of having a bunch of lines, I understand that will take away from the technical kind of, what do you call those things, a schematic board reference to it, but making it kind of just filled in would make it easier to see the house shape and the N. Other than that, I like the idea and the concept behind this, all right? Although I'm not sure what this is right here, the shadow, I wouldn't do that. All right, so 104091, first time submitting anything here. Okay, so let's take a look at both of these real quickly. Just a different color scheme apparently. I think I like this one better at the top because the white container, at least against this darker purple background, stands out more. There's more contrast. Here we kind of have contrast issues slightly. Now looking at the concept itself, this is probably the most obvious approach to take it, which is a house with a lock. So I like it for the symbolism. I really can't say anything too bad about it. Maybe it's the most obvious approach, which could, be construed as a negative, but not so much. I think it's, it's simple and everything that you've done design-wise is good, and you've definitely one of the better entries. So thanks for that. All right, so Mance M. Okay, so the issue here is we don't have the conventional, the rounded corner container, which is unique to iOS app icons. Now, when it comes to Android icons, you can make them a circle like this if you wish, but it has to have this square rounded corner thing. So that's one issue. Aside from that technical issue, I would say, the idea, that you were trying to allude to, the idea of neighborhood secure app icon, an eye representing security with a reflection of a house in the pupil of the eye. It doesn't look like an eye enough to the point at which if a person didn't know it was an eye already, they would have a hard time making that connection. Having this little, I would say when it comes to this very light blue, once again, if you're on a white background, which you have it against a white background, you can't really, there's not enough contrast. So that's one issue as well. So I like the concept that you're trying to portray here. I just think it would probably need to be executed a little bit better. All right. Thanks for that submission. All right. So Ben in size. All right. I'm going to try to pronounce that. All right. Hey, I had 2 ideas. Hope it's not a problem. Okay. So let's see here. Okay. So this one, from a conceptual standpoint, makes more sense than this one. I'm not sure what the diamond really has to do with anything when it comes to neighborhood secure. So that's one issue with that. That's the biggest issue here. This one, we have a shield, but I don't really see anything that's alluding to the idea of a neighborhood or people or social or anything. So you've missed out on there. So we were really trying to work with what's called a monogram, the idea of taking a single symbol and representing at least 2 ideas, which is neighborhood or social and security. So you got security here with the shield, but unfortunately not the other aspect. And then when it comes to everything else, I would say there's just probably a little bit too much going on in terms of all the gradients. We got the thin strokes here, got a black, we got a white one. We got this kind of glow reflective area coming off here. You got the red gradients over here, just too much going on in the realm of effects. So I would try to work on simplifying it a little bit better. All right. So Tobias, here we go. This is a good submission. So the idea here is to take a house and combine it with a padlock. So I think this is a pretty effective approach, and this is definitely one of the better design submissions that we had. So didn't go too intense on the long shadow, which is good. Some people try to emphasize it too much, and then it takes away from the design itself. So it should always be just a very secondary element, barely noticeable, if you're to do it. All right, but yeah, I can't really say. Maybe this gray right here should be white. Aside from that, I'm probably not going to critique this anymore. It's pretty solid, so thanks for that submission. Okay, so Mike's design, all right. All right, 14-year-old designer here. All right, so the lock in the middle is supposed to represent the fact of secured neighborhood. This entry took me about, okay, I was thinking about recording my screen. Blah, 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 okay. So the lock in the middle is supposed to represent the fact of a secured neighborhood. So I don't really see anything that's representative of the neighborhood aspect. We have like the keyhole, and then we have the padlock, but we don't have that other element. So that would be the biggest issue. Now, in terms of keeping things simple and everything else in terms of white space and margin and padding that you have going on and use of color and contrast, everything else is good. Just that one element was missed, I would say. So thanks for that. This is the first mission. Okay, blah, 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 blah. I really like your work. Okay. All right. So there's a couple issues here. I see what you were trying to do from a conceptual standpoint. You're trying to take the idea, the neighborhood idea, by embedding it into the center of the lock and having, stylized human figures here in the center. So I like that idea. The problem is we have a lot of issues with color and contrast here. So if you take a look at this, the container right here, the iOS container, and then we take a look at, the type of colors you use, specifically over here, it doesn't contrast enough with this shape, the padlock shape. The padlock should be something that really stands out a lot more than this muted gray that you have. Should be like a white almost. And then inside of it, we have another area where there's not a lot of contrast either. Specifically, if you're looking at this turquoise, and then you're looking at the bottom of this container or this padlock where this gray meets it, it kind of clashes. There's not enough contrast there, and if you fix these contrast issues, it would be a much better approach and a much better design, essentially. So work on the color, and I say that would be the best bet. All right, so coming down here, Youssef. All right. Okay, so there's some issues. There's definitely issues here. It's too complex. You tried to work in too many things, and there's a lot going on. We have tiny little thin strokes right here as well over here. So if you scale that down to the actual size of what it would be on an iPhone, for example, it would look blurry, and you don't want blurry, trust me. All right, so secondly, working the binoculars into the N itself, it's just a little bit too complex of an idea that you're trying to portray here. And then we have, a certain type of N, and then we have a lowercase s, and then it collides with the back portion of this shield. It creates for clutter. And so generally, you want to try to, when it comes to the app icon, you want to work things, you want to avoid overlapping things, basically, if you can do it. So I would say focus on simplifying the design and try to avoid overlapping parts of the design that are separate from each other. All right, thanks for that. All right, so Julia. All right, but first challenge, the key teeth, I don't know what they're called, are supposed to be houses to represent a neighborhood. Okay. All right, so looking at this, let's see here. Definitely this one is a better approach opposed to this one, just because if you were to scale this down at the size of what it would be on an iPhone or an iPad or whatever, all these strokes, especially right here, it's only like 2 pixels in between where you see the white, that would become blurred. And once again, you don't want blurry. Additionally, so that's why this one would be better, a lot better, just because it's a filled in shape and people would be able to see the actual shape rather than just looking at the outlines. Having said that, looking at this, there's also an issue when it comes to how small the spaces are. We see like this 1 pixel, which is literally 1 pixel in between each of the houses. And that's going to get blurred when you show it at the actual size. I should have required you guys to take your the icons and scale them down to a size of what they would actually be. So if like you're at this size, probably scale it down to like 48 by 48 pixels or something like that, because then we would be able to see if something's truly effective. I like the concept itself, but I don't think these little key notches would be obvious enough at the actual size the icon would be used, unfortunately. All right, so thanks for that. Everything else is good, though, about the colors and such. All right, so coming up to here. Okay, came up with an idea, another idea. I think it's better than the first one. The icon is a monogram S. Okay, so I had a lot of difficulty figuring out what was happening, just to be honest here. I could not see an S, really. I mean, maybe it's just me. Maybe it starts up here and it comes down. But what I saw initially, without even reading, I saw 2 individuals sitting on top of each other, or one sitting on another person's back. Like I saw a head here, or see a head here, an arm, the torso, and the bottom, and the legs here. And then the same object kind of just sitting on that person's back. Honestly, that is what I saw. Now, reading this, the icon monogram S, the 2 streets combine to make an S for secure, and the doors are next to each other or across anyway. It still captures a neighbor feeling with 2 doors side by side. It's hard for me to see the door here. I can see like, a doorknob, but I don't really see how the door, it's very abstract and it's difficult for me to understand what's happening here. What I honestly see are 2 people sitting on top of each other. So having said that, ignoring the concept or execution part of it, I would say that the colors would need to be a little bit more contrast. With this type of blue and this green, I think the blue would need to be a little bit darker, or the green would need to be a little bit lighter. Just a little bit, though. All right, thanks for that. All right, so Rovin, I'm not a designer, just a hobbyist. Hope you like this. I know it lacks creativity. I come here to be inspired. Okay. Yeah, see, this... It's just 4 different houses, not different. They were duplicated, or replicated rather, slapped on top of a shield. So the execution isn't really there. Instead of just replicating objects, you really want to come up with a single unique idea or concept instead of just kind of slapping on randomly these objects here. So you want to try to think of when it comes to these, let me come up here. When it comes to these symbols, for example, everything is like this one, for example. Very simple. It's its own idea. And a couple one over here. This one, it is its own symbol. Let me find another one because I know we had a couple. This one right here is its own symbol. So the submission over here, it just kind of lacks that execution in terms of making a single symbol. So that's what I would focus on. All right, thanks for that. All right, so Zix, I don't even know how to spell that or pronounce that. Let's see here. Okay, so design-wise, I like what's going on here. It's simple. The colors work well. The long shadows work well because they're not very obvious, but they're obvious enough that you can see them. But in terms of the symbolism, I do have a problem with that just because they seem a little bit too separate. And there's also an issue, it's kind of annoying me with these three elements here kind of seated at the bottom of the icon. It almost feels like they need to be centered. Like right here is the center, and then center it into the center of, like move everything up by about 40 pixels, basically. I think it'd be centered inside of the container itself a little bit better. In terms of the symbolism, it's just, yeah, the things are separated because you have two houses here and then a key or a padlock. Ideally, we'd work these in together somehow, some way, instead of making them three separate objects, because then you introduce a level of complexity to it. Other than that, everything else is really good. All right, so looking down here. All right, so yeah, some big issues with this one. Yeah, when it comes to your symbolism, we have, again, something that's repeated or replicated 4 times. You know, the rooftops, again, you want to stick to just one, ideally. Otherwise, it gets too complex, too much happening here, basically. Then you have issues with white space, margin and padding, in terms of the roofs getting too close to the edge right here. You want to try to give your symbolism room to breathe, basically. A lot of good white space on the top, left, right, and bottom. Okay, so focus on that. All right, so Jonathan Gray. All right, look at this one. Several issues. The icon itself, just looking at this icon itself and the idea of it, it's not bad. You know, we have the padlock, we have the house inside of it. You know, a couple others took this approach, but the execution, seriously lacking in a couple ways. First, there's no anti-aliasing going on, so all the edges are jagged, not ideal. And then color and contrast. So we have this, you know, this nice pretty color right here for the icon background, but then we have this gray, which transitions into a darker gray, and over here particularly, it starts to clash a little bit. Need a little bit more contrast. This should be either black or white. In this one, it'll be a little bit darker in the case of this being white. The long shadow, of course, just kind of keeps on going. Ideally, you keep it right here inside of the icon. But yeah, the anti-aliasing issue is really making it kind of just throwing it off big time. So definitely look into that, into remedying that situation in Photoshop, assuming that's what you used. Okay. All right, so looking at this, the issue with this is, once again, if we scaled this down to the size it would be used on an iPhone, for example, it would be it would lose a lot of its detail, especially with these individual houses. So you scale it down, it's going to look like little blur lines, essentially, and then you lose the concept. So I like the idea of the concept. I just think it would, yeah, and once again, I thought this may be from this person because we still have the anti-aliasing issues kind of going on here. It's a little bit jagged right here, so I'm not sure what's happening for you guys to create that, especially over here. I see there's like it's barely even a pixel, and you can barely see this stroke area, so it's really throwing it off and kind of making it look bad, unfortunately. You would probably also lose the N and the S at the size it would actually be used. Other than that, I like the concept. You just need to execute it a little bit better in a more simplistic manner with a lot less, you know, details and such. All right, Vlad. Okay, so this one, I do like the concept itself. This is definitely a different take. We have the house rooftop, and then we have it kind of just wrapping around this shield here. So the concept, I like it. The colors, I don't, unfortunately. There's too many. First, you know, it looks like there's like a 5-pixel stroke going around everything, and that's a slightly different hue and purple against what's inside in the middle of it right here. And I think all of those elements just kind of clash with each other too much. There's too much going on in that realm. Ideally, get rid of the stroke, make everything a solid flat color, or if you're going to do a gradient, make it a very subtle gradient. And that way you get rid of the complexity, the unnecessary complexity. So you could be complex, but it has to be executed correctly. So just to be safe, I would say, get rid of all the strokes and the gradients on the strokes and the gradients on everywhere else, and try to keep it a bit more simplified. Other than that, I like it. All right, Liam. Okay, so I wasn't exactly sure. The biggest issue right here is we have these two rooftops, I would assume they are, in the background, and their opacity is probably at like 70% or something like that. So they're kind of faded, but not faded enough. So it makes it kind of hard to see what's happening here. It looks like this is the focal point, the key in the house, but then this is still cluttering things. Then you have this this glossy area too coming there. So I would remove that. I would probably just remove these as well in the background. They're unnecessary. That way you'd have something that's much more simple and it's easier to see. And you've already proved your point in the concept. You kind of have a house and a key. There we go. Just stick with that. I would get rid of this portion too. I see there's a very subtle area that's outlined inside of it. All right, coming down here. All right, so this one, unfortunately, a lot of issues going on here. Way too complex. So when it comes to icon design, you want to stay away from as much as possible unless you're really executing it correctly. All of these details, so the starburst effect, get rid of that. Get rid of the glossiness and all these very subtle reflections and highlights. Get rid of all that stuff. And then I understand you come from a 3D, this is a 3D render, so it's kind of hard to make it work as well as you would want it to, but there's just too much going on. We have the red, or green rather, green, red, and blue here. We have all these tiny reflections, and we have the padlock going through it. I like the concept, very unique, of course, but when it comes to icon design, there's just too much going on, especially with all the reflections and such. So I would work on just probably stay away from 3D until you can at least master icon design from a flat 2D perspective first. All right, thanks for that. And this as well, very difficult to see. If this were at the actual size, you wouldn't even see these houses, unfortunately. And there's a lot of issues with the color and contrast. Not enough contrast here with this gray. I think my voice is starting to go. All right, Scully. Okay, too much happening here in terms of the bevels. This outer portion right here, the bevels here, that's not bad. But when you get into here, that's where it gets kind of hard to see, especially on the type. The neighbor, there's too much. I could see that some sort of bevel was added to it, and it just looks a little bit blotched. If this were scaled down, you wouldn't be able to read it. I think in my requirements, I'm not sure, it said not to use neighbor secure, because you wouldn't see it. Having said that, assuming you didn't put the text here, all we have is an I here. That's probably not ideal in terms of the concept execution, just because an I could be interpreted to be essentially anything. It's not a bad route because it is generalized, but again, I think the bevels right here on the text is what's throwing it off. And then plus we have issues with contrast. If this were scaled down, you probably wouldn't be able to see the I. So just too much applied on the effects route. So I would stay away from that. All right, coming down here. Okay, so unfortunately, this doesn't say anything about security. I mean, the glasses don't really. I mean, you could say it does, but to your average person who looks at it, no. In terms of the design itself for what it is, that's good. I like, the flat design appearance. That was pulled off pretty well. But I'd say the major issue is just the concepts. Okay, coming down here. All right, a Blender submission here. All right, looking at this, so it is just an NS lettermark, but I don't see anything else that points to the fact that this is a neighborhood or a social security app. So with that said, I would say the biggest issue is the concept. Looking at this, if all we wanted was like a letter mark, this would be pretty cool. But again,
Not much there's not much else I can critique, unfortunately, aside just to say that, it's not executed correctly in terms of concept. Thanks for the entry, though. All right, another entry, combine 2 houses, a lock and an alarm siren, secure. All right, let's see here. So yeah, there's a little bit too much happening here, and then also I probably would stay away from the 3D element as well. I try to stick with making it, forward-facing 2D, because we can see all these little notches in here, and it's just becoming a little bit too complex. You probably do this with Illustrator, I assume. Ignoring the 3D element of it, it seems like there's probably just a little bit too much going on. We have the whole padlock itself, we have the 2 houses, we have the keyhole, and we have these out here, and we have this right here. Try to simplify it much more, and I think you would have a much more solid concept. All right, let's go to page 2. All right, okay, so Richard KL. So we got a house with binoculars. So this is definitely a unique entry. It looks like there's too many lines just going on here. So we have this right here, we have these over here, these at the top, we have the 2 portions of the house. So if you were to scale this down, it would be kind of hard to see all those details because they become a little bit cluttered. Having said that, using the house as a center portion of the binoculars is a unique idea, it's creative. I think if there was a way to simplify the whole, the binoculars and get rid of all the lines, I think it'd be a much more solid concept. So overall, not bad. All right, so Simon, all right, this person submitted, I had to resubmit because their name wasn't showing up. Where's this at? Okay. So yeah, this is this the same person or no? Okay, I don't think so. So we use the same idea of binoculars in a house. I like the concept. I'm not too sure repeating them 4 times is the best bet. The colors and all, they're pretty cool. They complement each other pretty decently. The one thing I don't like is the inner glow or inner shadow that's on this binocular kind of throws things off. I would have just left it as, without that. But it does look, aesthetically, it does look pretty good. But again, on a small size, you kind of lose that detail. For example, if you look at this one, you know what this is right away. It's the iTunes store. It has something to do with music, right? Then if we look at this one, well, unfortunately, you kind of lose the binocular shape. Now, if you had just had one and made it larger, you might be able to see those details. So thanks for that submission. All right, here's one. Okay, new to Photoshop, yeah. So we have issues here with there's too much of a heavy glossy area. I would completely do away with that because you kind of almost lose. It feels like there's mist on the page or something. Having said it, aside from that, looking at this, yeah, you don't want to replicate your symbolism. So definitely don't do that. And in terms of the camera, we have an issue here. This tiny fine little line is going to get lost when you scale it down, and it's used at its actual size. So get rid of all those and try to combine everything into one unique symbol instead of just trying to have separate symbolism all over. All right, thanks for that. All right, Jay Tinker. All right, so too much happening here with the lines. Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues with new designers, or relatively new designers at least, is trying to overthink things. I think overthinking has been one big issue in this challenge. Trying to do more than what you need to do. Simple is better. That good design is simple. Good design is as minimal as it has to be. That's what we need to focus on. So, again, I understand the concept that you're trying to go for, but the lines here, the zebra pattern just throws it off way too much. It'd be way too complex. It's almost disorienting. So I'd work on simplifying. I would get rid of those lines. And, for what it is, it's not too bad, but execution-wise with the lines and stuff, I would stay away from. So thanks for that. All right, column, yeah, this is the resubmission of that other one. Okay, so GBC design. All right, so not enough here is unique. Execution-wise, for an eyeball, this isn't bad. It's very simple. You would be able to understand it at a smaller size, but there's nothing relevant here in terms of combining the 2 ideas of neighborhood and security, unfortunately. But thanks for that. All right, 2 attempts. Excuse the basic nature, but it's the first time I've tried this. All right, so This would be more relevant than this concept, I would say. Sorry, I'm like burping here. This right here, there's a little bit, it would be kind of difficult even to scale this down at its actual size to see what exactly is happening here. We have some contrast issues and color and contrast issues with this black and this dark blue. That would be kind of hard to see. This little 2-pixel shadow right here would probably get lost in detail in terms of the pixelization when you get smaller. And too much is happening. Even though it's simple, there's still too many subtle things. Like you can see part of that blue right here, part of that blue padlock right there. That's not good. You don't want those tiny details just sitting there cluttering the design. All right, so I would work on simplifying this even more. I know you said the simple nature, but it's still actually a little bit too much going on. This one, unfortunately, I mean, you can actually tell what you're trying to convey here, but I just don't think it has enough relevance to the idea to make it appropriate. All right. All right, so this is one of the entries that I would say is pretty good. You know, they are one of the designers who were able to do something that's complex, but still execute it in an overall aesthetically pleasing manner, basically. So we could clearly tell we kind of have a padlock sort of situation going on here. And we have a person as the keyhole. And it's still, one thing that kind of does bother me about this is the top padlock portion. It seems to get lost a little bit too much over here with the shading. But other than that, for what it is, it's a really cool take, and it's one of the type of iOS icons that are real graphical, but pulled it off and executed it appropriately if you're going to do something that complex. And really cool kind of recreation here as well. So thanks for that submission. All right, so white out. All right. You know, this is actually a pretty cool concept. You know, we can see a surveillance camera with kind of like a front door house. This is probably one of the most unique concepts. I'm not too sure about the all of the, what do you call it, the strokes inside of it, just simply because once you scale it down, we're going to run into issues there of complexity, I think, a little bit. Yeah, this one's 1,000 times better than this one, though. Just because it's illustrated well and the concept's really unique and it's all tied in together. I think if we worked on the colors a little bit and possibly the strokes, it would be a really solid concept. So thanks for that submission. All right, another one. Okay. Eye house. The doorknob or the pupil in the eye, the neighborhood watch. This is the one for sure now. Okay. So the eye house. Okay, I could see an eye. And that does seem pretty unique. That's a cool concept. I think maybe this is just a slight critique of it. To try to emphasize the eye just a tad bit more somehow, maybe on the left and right, to try to define that entire eye shape, possibly. But yeah, that's definitely a cool concept. So thanks for submitting that. All right, so the biggest issue here is color, I would say. We have a lot of, we have the kind of like this very dull lime green here. Then we have this green, and then we have a lot of details here. This shield itself, along with the door, is like flat design. This is what we considered flat and minimal design. And then we have out here this radial gradient, and mixing those two along with the color combinations kind of makes everything a little bit complex, and it throws off what's called formerly as the visual hierarchy. You're not really sure what's supposed to be the main element of focus here. So I would work on simplifying that aspect of it. All right, but thanks for that. MK Design. All right, so too much was really trying to be worked into here. We got the shields, we got the two flashlights, we got the house, a very detailed house at that. Too much happening in terms of complexity, and I would say gradients and color as well, because we have all these different colors. We got the blue, we got the orange, we got the yellow, we got the dark gray, we got the different reds and pinks. So you overthought this one, and you really want to keep things simplified in terms of the concept. Looking at this result up here, yeah, you could say, well, hey, that's complex, and you're not talking crap about his. I'm not talking crap about anyone's, but he executed the concept well. It's a very simple concept. But over here, we're trying to symbolize a bunch of different items, and it just doesn't work out as well, unfortunately. And especially if you were to scale it down, it'd be hard to really understand and see all these details. So I would work on simplifying those. All right, another one with a slightly different approach. So I probably would not do that because it makes you look like a terrorist or something, like you don't like houses, let's destroy them or something. So I'm not really sure what the no symbol is in relation to the houses. I'm not exactly sure. So I think there's an issue of execution or concept execution in that realm. But thanks for that. So KPEZ. All right, so this is once again one of those issues where you're trying to repeat symbolism, and ideally you just try to stay away from that. Try to come up with a unique symbol that can stand on its own without replicating it unnecessarily. And plus, I don't really see any element of security embedded in with this. So those are the two issues I would say with that design. Other than that, I like the colors and such, although I think this right here clashes a little bit, kind of makes it hard to see. But in terms of simplicity, definitely there. All right, so Hacksbyte, we got two more. We have some edge aliasing going on here, unfortunately, which really makes it just really throws off the entire design, at least for me, just because it looks all jagged on the end. And then we have some issues here in terms of the symbolism inside. So we're repeating symbolism again. Stay away from that. Try to remember that. And making them invert when they connect with each other. That adds an extra level of complexity that's unnecessary, and it makes it hard to follow and see exactly what's going on. If you just put one single house here in the center, would have been 1,000 times better. All right, so thanks for that submission. And then over here, once again, we're repeating symbolism. Don't want to do that. And everything's just kind of separated. It doesn't really make it a unique symbol. It just kind of becomes a collage of objects, which you want to stay away from. All right, so thanks for all of those entries. It was 36 minutes there. Yeah, the winner, go ahead and, I'm going to try to contact you and try to remember that. If I don't, contact me on the YouTube page or here by going to the contact at the bottom. And yeah, so everyone, thanks for the submissions. If you check out the video courses, I released a iOS and Android app icon design course. It's only $10. You go here. You really see my take on designing icons, not just for iOS, but Android as well. So check that out. Subscribe here on YouTube. Check out the other courses. There's going to be more coming down the line, and please consider the one-on-one training. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.